So in this video, um, it's an hour long, and if you care to watch it, keep watching it. I do the sled for an hour straight. I searched the internet and I don't think there is a video like this out yet, so it might be sort of an internet first, which is kind of crazy in this day and age. I'm sure someone's already done it. I'm not claiming to be the first person to have ever done the sled for an hour, but the first person to do it for an hour straight and get it on video, maybe. Um, anyway, I tend to do this kind of thing. Um, I like to do some sort of an endurance person, bodybuilder, powerlifter. Uh, I guess the term that people like to call it these days is hybrid athlete, so to speak. But I like taking on challenges or the workout. It's not enough that it's a hypertrophy workout or a powerlifting workout. The workout has to suck. There has to be a challenge to it. And it doesn't necessarily mean doing sled for an hour every day. Or it could also be testing a new range of mobility or doing more mobility exercises than I've ever done. But it's challenging. Doing mobility or stretching kind of work isn't very fancy. It doesn't give you that ego boost. But it's necessary regardless, and going through doing those uncomfortable or unpopular or uncool exercises, you get a lot more benefit than not doing them. Anyway, so I started doing the sled a lot after watching Knees Over Toes guy, and he would talk a lot about I don't know, there was some line that he would say, once you've done hundreds, I've done hundreds of miles on a sled, and I've done ultra marathons before, so I've done the most I've ever done is 137.5 miles. So like those kind of numbers just does something in my brain. It's like, oh, 100 miles, like I can get there. So I'm not, this is by no means 100 miles in a day, though maybe that might be a challenge for someday. 100 mile sled drag. Yeah, I don't think I'm doing that anytime soon, but this very well might be my first steps towards training towards something like that. Anyway, besides the point. So I started doing the sled a lot because of Knees Over Toes guy. And I mean, I've just been, I'm kind of an extremist, so like whatever Knees Over Toes guy said, I did my research, I bought his book, what he said made sense, and I went crazy with it. And turns out him and Mr. Infinity do the sled a lot, and I wonder, they've probably done stuff like this. I wouldn't be surprised if they've already done this and they've just never gotten it on video or something. But yeah, I would do backward, forward with like really light weights. Initially, I'd just walk backwards for an hour or so. Anyway, so in this workout, what I do is I'm I'm doing backward sled one way and pushing the sled back the other way, obviously. And I do it for an hour straight. For the first 20 minutes, there's no weight on the sled, it's just the sled. I just go back and forth for 20 minutes, and then the next 20 minutes, I add a 25, and then for the last 20 minutes, I add another 25. So, yeah, I don't take any rest the whole time. No water, just straight back and forth. There's a couple of YouTubers that I've been watching or have become aware of. that do like these one I did 24 hours of something, or I did 1 hour of push-ups or something like that. Well, here's I did 1 hour of sled. Um, um, Wait, I think so. I think Chris Heria, he came out with how many push-ups we could do in 1 hour, and I forget the guy's name. I forget. But there's another guy, KES. Yeah, 500 push-ups in one set. He does all kinds of interesting things. Um, yeah, yeah, KES. Yeah, he's crazy. 1,300 push-ups without dropping. 1,000 push-ups. Like, yeah. Anyway, so I'm not at that guy's level with push-ups or anything. But you know, sled. Uh, so I've done a lot of, well, not a lot of, enough ultra marathons, and what ended up happening was each time I did an ultra, I would end up getting really like bad injuries, or get like before like, or during training, like my knees felt bad, my joints felt bad, and uh I had just got done listening to Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins, and I love that book. I've heard it 20 times over, probably more. And so I did do ultras before I did do a ultra before I ever heard about Goggins. But once I heard about Goggins, the fire reignited. Anyway, so with the fire reignited, I did 100K with about, oh no, not 100K, 50K, with about 3 weeks of training, maybe 2 weeks. Got really bad cramps, but finished it. Then I did 100K, I think, a month or two later. Then I tried to do 100 miler less than a month later, or about a month later. Missed it. I got out at around mile 60 or 66. I dropped out because my legs were pretty messed up. Took me a while to recover from that. Ended up doing this 150K which is around 100 miles. Not exactly, but close to. And it was in sand terrain, so kind of like beach sand, but through trails. It was like this really weird place. Forest, I think Forest City or Sandridge Forest, Illinois. Check it out. It's a miserable place, and I've done 150K there. Anyway, so and then after that, my goal became to do a sub 24-hour ultra. And I tried to do that at Tunnel Hill 100, which is a popular location for people to try and attempt something like that, because it's a flat course. But around no, mile 50. Yeah, I dropped out at mile 50, I think. I'm not sure. I dropped out at mile 50, and like my Achilles was hurting really bad. So I just started getting really frustrated of signing up for all these races and just getting really messed up. Like I got to a point where I wasn't just doing it to finish these things. Like I wanted to be competitive. I wanted to do good times. And since I just kept getting hurt, I had to rethink my approach towards achieving my goals. So, uh, fortunately, I came across Knees Over Toes guy and everything he was talking about, and I took what he was saying seriously. I also played basketball a lot, and being able to see him dunk and stuff, and see how he was able to improve his vertical and all that, like that was something that resonated. Anyway, so he talks a lot about doing the reverse sled. So the main idea is one of the weak, like most people talk about not training in the knees over toes position because it's the weakest position or whatever like that. Uh, and then but instead they keep training in positions that are not knees over toes, and they get really strong in those positions. But what ends up happening is if ever they end up being that heavy resistance that they're working with ends up getting exposed in the knees over toes region or the weaker region, people end up getting injured. The whole concept behind walking backwards and dragging a sled is with every step that you're taking backwards, your knee is over your toe. What ends up happening is because walking backwards and dragging a sled is such a natural motion, and the worst thing that can happen in the case of a sled is the sled doesn't move if it's too heavy. Your likelihood for getting injured is super minimal, and you're able to get a lot of volume and exposure to your knees in the position where it's the weakest, which is the knees over toes position. And I don't know if it's just generally supposed to be that weak. I think it's because of how modern day life has become, where you're always sitting and you're not moving around a whole lot. Your hip flexors get you're always in the seated position, so your hip flexors stay tight, your lower back stays tight, stationary. You're not you're hunched over, all kinds of stuff like that. And on top of that, a lot of people are ego lifting and trying to move the most amount of weight possible. And it's if you're not strong in the you'll see people move to just 90 or just, and this is not like if your goal is to move and be a really good power lifter, like it makes sense that you're trying to work with a form that makes you most most able to lift the most weight. But but also just exclusively focusing on that and not working on any supplementary things where your body is not working in in the areas where it's weakest or weaker. That's my cat. Your body ends up being more prone to injury if it's ever exposed to that position. So, for example, I don't know if anybody watches the UFC too much. I watch it a lot. I saw John Jones get injured. I don't know if anyone's seen that video, but John Jones gets injured trying to do this wrestling move, and it looks fairly straightforward. And if you look at his videos and stuff, he benches, I think, over 3 plates, if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, the guy that he's working with was probably heavy 200 or whatever. But still, though, for how strong he is, I think the main thing that happened was, if you see, he does a lot of bench. And I'm not sure, and I could be wrong about this because these people are being trained by like the best coaches and whatnot. But I wonder how much they train like one arm deep, like one, so not like alternate presses, but one arm dumbbell presses where you're going all the way down, like, and by all the way down I mean like where your palm is like at the same level as your ribs. That's how deep your arms can go. And how often do you expose your body to that range of motion? If you're not exposing your body to that range of motion and you're so used to deadlifting 400 pounds, or not deadlifting, benching 400 pounds or so, it is so easy to assume that you'll be okay just doing a certain movement. But since your body is not really, or since the chest is not really, in his case it was a tendon injury, I think, where the chest connects to the shoulder. And if there was more exposure to the if there was more exposure to or if during his training he did more if during his training he focused more on, and again, I don't know this for sure, this is all just speculation, but if during his training he trained a lot more in the deep ranges of motion, I suspect that he would not have this problem. This same concept can kind of be applied to everything. So, for example, snake venom can kill you. However, if you, so I forget the guy's name, but there was this one guy, he would always inject himself with like diluted quantities of snake venom, and his body slowly got more used to it, to the point where he couldn't really be poisoned anymore, and they used a lot of his blood for helping snakebite victims and things like that. Anyway, the body is pretty much an infinitely adaptable machine. Uh, However, it also functions on the basis of use it or lose it. So, the idea behind, so like if you bring it to knees over toes and this chest thing that I was talking about, the if you don't train your knee in the position where the knee is over the toe, and if you don't train the chest where the chest is in those deep ranges of motion, your body starts degrading those parts sometimes, or like atrophies it in relation to the other muscles, or the other muscles just get way bigger than the tendons can actually handle. And with but anyway, bringing it back to snake venom, your body has the capacity to a certain degree to fight whatever the venom is. Like so again, this is an analogy, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm kind of sure, or kind of certain, this is how it works. So I'm guessing the diluted quantity of the venom that they injected into the guy, or the guy used to do first to become immune to a certain kind of snake's venom, was like the minimal dose to where his body didn't shut down, or uh, could comfortably handle it. Like he might have gotten a little discomfort maybe, but not enough to where he dies. And then they probably slowly up that dose. It's kind of, it works similar in so many different ways. So like alcohol tolerance, like a person who's drinking for the first time, they throw up if they have 3 or 4 drinks. But there are so many people that have 12, 15, 16, and they're still going, and they still seem coherent. Your body is almost infinitely adaptable. It figures out ways to stay alive and cultivate this internal environment where it has to make the least amount of change in order to deal with the stimulus it receives on the most regular. So, for example, an example of that would be if someone runs a lot, your body starts um, so the legs get stronger. If so, this is, let's say they're running a lot, no resistance training, just running. Okay, just running. It starts losing a certain. It tries to lose weight because it is trying to become more efficient at this stimulus of running. Like, it wants to use the least amount of calories and do the least amount of internal change in order to accomplish this goal of this guy is going to be a guy who is running regularly, and running a lot, like, regularly. So the obvious change to make is to become lighter, so that the body, so the more heavier you are, the harder your body has to work in order to move you through that distance. So it makes sense that you have to lose weight either through fat or through muscle or through whatever other means, um, that the body decides. So it could be water weight and all these kinds of things, and also like difference in bone density. So like your bones in your legs might become much denser relative to other parts of your body if all you're doing is focusing on running and stuff along those lines. This is assuming there is no other resistance training going on. Anyway, the idea is your body is now realizing that, or is trying to adapt to this stimulus of, oh, it's going to be a runner and it needs to do this way. Different genetic profiles will favor one kind of movement uh, versus the other. So if you have a lot of endurance type muscle fibers, or a lot more power or sprinting kind of, so like I think it's type 2B, which is explosive, type 2A, and then type 1. But yeah, uh, workout all. Well, what was I saying? Oh yeah, progressive overload everything. Everything is progressively overloadable to a certain degree, and then I think there is a threshold. Um, so, for example, what would be a threshold? So there are people who can deal with the cold. So, for example, Wim Hof, like through his breathing techniques and stuff, he's able to withstand cold for like hours on end. If you're able to train yourself and to accept, like, work with your mind and accept the situation you're in, very often your body will figure out a way to adapt and um, survive in the situation that it is in, provided it is sufficiently trained enough. So, so, and so that's kind of like the idea of progressive overload. So, if it's your first time sitting in a sauna, the first 5 minutes is really hard, or the first time you ever do 5 minutes. Well, I don't know if it's really hard, but it's hard. But then slowly, you get good at it fast, and then it's like 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Um, but the first time you do it, if you'd have gone for 20 minutes, it would have probably made you nauseous or feel much more sick. What ends up happening is your body, when you keep exposing it to the stimulus of heat, the mechanisms inside slowly, progressively, like, again, progressively overloaded. It gets better at withstanding durations of heat or temperature. So the two ways, similar to weight training, in weight training you can progressively overload with reps or with the amount of weight, or a combination, which is like total volume. Um, in sauna, it's duration at a certain time, or duration at a certain temperature, or how or how many minutes can you get at a certain temperature? Those are the two ways you can overload it. Then another way you can overload it is, I guess, I don't know if this is exactly overloading or just a whole different thing, but um, lifting weights or doing an exercise in the sauna. The idea of doing an exercise in the sauna when it's like 80 Celsius, I don't know how many Fahrenheit is that, but would be crazy to someone who doesn't do the sauna often. In fact, even to people who do the sauna often, the idea is crazy. But it is something that you can build up to. Um, so pretty much everyone or training needs to be approached, or just life in general needs to be approached through that idea. Every so like find the this is like knees over toes guys stuff becoming life philosophy. So for example, fear, I think, is also like a form of progressive overload, if that makes sense. So you know how hmm. All right, let's try to do this. Okay, so there is let's take the when people go through a traumatic situation, they have, I guess, like a trauma or PTSD, and something like mental illness or mental injury, so to speak. And of their physical injuries, which is like, oh, my knee gave out or whatever. So usually, what rehab is, you expose yourself. So like once it's kind of healed, once you've taken the rest, and it's all kind of like, oh, okay. Um, you can either choose to favor your knee and not try to work it through the motions that it should be capable of working through, and it heals back all weird, or you're able to move again but not as good as you used to. And in the back of your mind, you're always still kind of iffy about it and you're feeling unsure. Similarly, like let's talk about a situation like maybe stage fright, or you've had an event that happened to you which causes you to be socially anxious. Um, Progressively overload it. So try to go to a place where, like maybe a library that is in your local area or something, or a playground that you don't feel too weird by, and then step it up. Then go to a different playground that are a different restaurant. So maybe you usually eat at one restaurant, you go to a different restaurant, and then maybe you go to a bigger restaurant, and maybe you go to a social meeting. Like you see what I'm saying? Like if so, a social anxiety, you could almost think of it as a kind of injury. And your options are to either be a shut in and not experience the world, or to experience the world, but it's too scary. So you find what your lowest threshold is. Can you like let's say you're zero, never like you probably at least have a relative or a friend or someone that once they probably know somebody, hopefully, or if not, then just go to a local place or something, or go to a basketball court or go to the gym, and then eventually you know you the idea is there is zero people, then there's one person, then there's two person, then there's three person, then there's groups, and you can slowly build towards that. Let's say you have an injury. The idea of dunking immediately um, is not something that sounds very possible, not something that you want. I'm not sure. Or, well, not want, something that you think you're capable of, even. Like, oh, let me at least be able to walk. That's probably what you're thinking about. But then, instead of that, find your lowest threshold. Like, understand what your knee is capable of. move it through that. Then try to keep doing it some more and some more. And eventually, if you are if you don't drink too much snake venom and you just slowly inject the snake venom, your knee will bend deeper than ever. Your legs will start doing things that it never started doing before. But you gotta inject that snake venom slowly. You inject too much snake venom too fast, it'll kill you. And that's kind of the concept with lifting, is like your body is infinitely adaptable. Don't get too impatient and then uh, drink too much snake venom, if that makes sense. Um, Instead, find how much snake venom each part of your body can take, and then slowly start injecting it with it. Um, so, can you move 10 pounds through your deep ranges of your chest? Okay, then go for 20. Can you do 20 for 20 reps? Okay, then do 22 for 20 reps. It doesn't have to be very fast. It's going to be really slow. Um, but it's worth it. Because when you get injured, you don't get to lift at all. You don't get to work out at all. And when you don't get to work out at all, it sucks. And well, uh, there's this whole thing to be said for working out through actual injuries and stuff. And there's also a whole thing to be said for if you are not um, like what do you say? If you're not getting injured, well, not you don't want to get injured, but very often, uh, if you're pushing yourself hard enough, like if you're actually trying to test your limits, it's very hard not to get injured. If you're actually testing your limits, um, I don't know if it's very hard not to get injured, but I do definitely think it increases the likelihood. The more you try to push your limits, the more you can be really ready. Um, I don't know what's a good example of something like this. Um, I don't know. You could probably train yourself to sit in a sauna for on a really high temperature for an hour or so, but I'm pretty sure you can't just sit around in fire. I'm sure fire would still burn you. So there is always, you know, be don't play with heat. Don't play with fire. I don't know, but every once in a while, playing with fire is cool if done using the correct precautions. You know, you can be a fire juggler. I don't know. That's just an analogy for do push yourself, but pushing yourself doesn't always have to be this thing that ends up in injuries. Anyway, my personal goals are so I've been I was doing all these ultras and getting injured and all that kind of thing, and my goal was I just wanted to reverse. I wanted to get through these things without being so hurt. There were a lot of ultra runners who seemed to be able to do a lot more miles, who were also lifting quite a bit, who didn't seem to get injured as much as I did. And so I had to realize that if I just keep running and just hoping something sticks, I'm just going to mess my body up for the long term. So I've decided to, alright, let's fix a lot of the things, and now I've been on a 2 year journey of fixing myself up, and I feel fitter than ever. Um, and I don't know, now I don't have that much of a fire for ultras. Doesn't feel like it, but I still want to do a sub 24 hour 100 miler, and I will still do that. Um, my interest in these things kind of work in cycles where, uh, like I pursue certain physical goals in one area, so running for a while, then bodybuilding, then powerlifting, and then it kind of just goes around in this cycle where uh, I'm doing random kinds of physical challenges. There's a lot of stories in my life, and probably that'll make a lot of good content and talks like this in the future. I'm not even sure how many people are going to listen to all of this, but if you've been sticking around, like, comment, subscribe, tell a friend that you stumbled across a cool YouTube channel where a guy's ranting about stuff while pulling a sled for an hour. Anyway, I think that's enough talking for me today. I'm going to lower the volume of the clip of me dragging the sled. Otherwise, it gets caught for copyright or whatever. The part where I'm speaking will probably be fine, but besides that, um, anyway, if you had to take anything away from this, is if you have any kind of mobility problems or lifting problems or even quite a bit of life problems, try to find the low, like, what is the minimum amount to where you can do said activity. Like, to give the example of um, heights, if you're scared of standing on top of four stair or one stair, or no, if you're scared of heights, can you look down from one stair? Can you look down from two stairs? Can you look down from three stairs? And then slowly work your way up. Are you scared of spiders? Well, look at a spider on TV and try to keep looking at a spider on TV. Then try to look at a real spider, so on and so forth. Then watch Spider-Man. I don't know. But the point is, progressively overload, or the concept of progressive overload works in a lot more concepts than just weight training. It also applies to a lot of other concepts in life. So, yeah, like this video. I'm pushing and pulling a sled for an hour. It's kind of cool, I think. Like, comment, subscribe. I did other stuff too, but I don't know, this is cool. I pushed and pulled a sled for an hour. Alright, it's 2 a.m. here. I'm staying up and editing to keep things on schedule, so yeah. Good night, y'all. And again, please, I need the fame for the algorithm. I need fame. Like, comment, and subscribe. Alright, good night. Bye.